Ooh, welcome back to the Lawrence McKenna channel. It's good to have you guys. Arsenal win 3-2 late on against Aston Villa. What a fascinating, scintillating game. Previous manager versus current manager. Lots of different little narratives in there. Aston Villa on the revival, but at the same time, Arsenal also on the revival. It's been a couple of tricky games in a row for Arsenal, and it looked like this was going to be another one of those games. You know me on this channel, I'm not all about the result, but in a title race, it has to be about the result. It has to also be about the performance though, if we're here on this channel. And Arsenal put in a performance to remember. Mainly because there were lots of individual moments within the result, which meant that Arsenal can go, you know what? We've actually got some players here that can win a title. There are some moments which they will probably look back on after this game and go, was that the moment where we thought, actually, this is still on? Because over the last couple of weeks, I get it, like losing Sean Dyche's Everton, losing quite categorically in the second half to that Man City side must have been frustrating and demoralising. One of the two sides are the sides that you have done your utmost, I am serious, like done your utmost to beat this season. Not been the Arsenal that a lot of people said they were previous seasons, but also the Arsenal that you imagine they thought themselves to be at times. And then that result against Man City, a side who were chasing you guys down and ultimately got equal on points. It wasn't a great result, and I covered it at the time. So this Aston Villa game was so pivotal, so key. It felt like a turning point within the season. And this is one of those times where you look at the sequence of games within a season and you say, you know what? The right time to play teams does count. The sequence in which you play a side makes a difference. Arsenal built themselves up in the first half of the season. They played good games against teams where they would have built their... I would have said they would have built their confidence up at the time, but also just their self-belief and the momentum that the side needed. And that was so key to that 50 points in the first half of the season, leading them on to a possible 100-point season. But since then, we have seen doubt begin to creep in, certain elements of stress beginning to show within the side. And obviously those things are natural within a season. It's not necessarily an individual criticism of Arsenal. But then in this Aston Villa game, against Unai Emery, against a manager who's got a personal relationship to the club, and also against Aston Villa, who are being revived right now, who could come to one of their best points total in a long time, but also are technically showing the kind of side that they can be after that Steven Gerrard start to the season. I didn't have a good feeling before the game. I was kind of concerned going into this from an Arsenal perspective. What is it that they're going to have to do against this Villa side in order to get a win? And it turns out it needed to be something which was actually not necessarily what I'd imagine Mikel Arteta wanted to achieve at the start of the season, you know? You would have wanted a more controlling performance, and there were at times control for the Arsenal side. But Villa have got great technical players. They've also got some players who are very capable of making beautiful moves and scything through any side in the Premier League, and that can sometimes be demoralising within a game. They went up early within the match. They then also went ahead again. Arsenal had to come back twice. For me, that shows the kind of grit, the kind of determination that you need if you're going to be within a title shot. And then they also showed that within the midfield, they were able to overcome Jorginho, Xhaka, and probably Odegaard. They really closed the space for Odegaard, which really stopped Arsenal from operating early on. But the key in this game, they kept doing it in the first half, and they did it in the second half. I think some players deserve yellow cards for what they were doing, but it was very subtle, very clever. They absolutely coddled and then beat up Saka. And it was starting to show, it was starting to work. Once you lost that Saka link out there, once you lost some of the width that Arsenal really need, and they managed to get it to Saka, but once you lost some of the width and the danger of his pace after they just scythed his Achilles in the first half, you could see that Arsenal were frustrated. You could actually see that Ben White was getting frustrated with Saka when he tried to get the pass through to him. He was trying to say to him, like, you're meant to be here. But Saka was limping by that point. Saka was bandaged up around the ankle, and you could see he was still limping early on in the second half. In fact, when he went down early in the second half, he did make that, I need a substitution type sort of thing. And you started to wonder if it was actually Arsenal's day. Honestly, I was sitting there thinking, you know what? Aston Villa looked just as likely to score as Arsenal here. Villa were counter-attacking. They were managing to get the ball away very easily with the likes of Konsa heading it away. Also, the key is the midfield structure for Arsenal. I keep talking about it. I'm going on about it this season, but midfield is so key for every side in the Premier League, but particularly Arsenal. And without Thomas Partey in the side, a guy who has played a key role, but has also had his own issues, and he's out of the side for particular reasons at the moment, but basically such a key role in pushing Arsenal up the pitch on the Saka side, but also basically giving Arsenal a bit of symmetry with where when Xhaka pushes up, Partey just holds in such a specific way, but also knows when to push forward. So you've got Xhaka pushing far forward on one side. Odegaard has a bit more space towards the right with Saka, but then sometimes drifts around towards Martinelli or like the Trossard position. There wasn't quite that balance and the symmetry, or even just some of the skewed nature of the way you want to see Arsenal this season. And you could see that, the ball was running through Jorginho, but he wasn't giving Arsenal the same foothold that you need from that Partey type position. Jorginho is a great forward-thinking player, and there are times where he's really good at pressing the ball, getting the ball back, and closing the ball down, but not in the same way as Partey is. He's not got the same sort of intensity, width, or height, or even just physical presence that Partey has. Now, I get it. There are other players in the league that also have the same thing, in say like a Thiago or someone like that. But if you've got that, then you have to have a physical presence within the midfield on both sides. Like, other teams have got a bit more symmetry. And I get it, also bringing Jorginho in is a masterstroke. It gives you a real level of control. And of course, he scored that goal today. Did he really? No, he didn't really score a goal. It was no goal, but you get my point. That could have been so close. And Jorginho, he gives good options always in passing areas. You can kind of see the list I made in January of the passing type players, the players who are like a Rice or someone like that who could come in, give Arsenal some great sequences, but also win the ball back a little bit more consistently. Also, there are a couple of times where Aston Villa players were coming towards Jorginho and they can just go around him, or he loses his footing. There's that famous compilation, of course, him doing the same. And I was beginning to worry that without that foothold in midfield that they had with Partey, would they really be able to do it? And I had that text exchange with a couple of Arsenal friends pre-game. Without the Partey presence in midfield, do you really have that same Arsenal side? And the answer is no, actually. You don't. And that's not a criticism, again. It is just an observation of this Arsenal team right now. They're a different side without Partey in the team. But you also have the likes of Zinchenko, and I love the interchange between Xhaka, Zinchenko, and Jorginho, or even Jorginho and Odegaard, or Xhaka, Odegaard, Jorginho. There's lots of different little triangles that Arsenal can be making, and when they bring Ben White in, someone like that, or even a Tomiyasu later in the game, you can see Tomiyasu just gives them that little bit of width that then inside Saka can exploit and cut that on the inside. I love that, the shapes that Arsenal are making. And early on, they were frustrated. They weren't in their groove in the same way. They had to pull their way back into the game. There wasn't the rhythm that you wanted to see from Arsenal. And, Unai Emery is really good at breaking up any side's rhythm. But as they got into the game, as the space began to open up, and as Aston Villa needed to counter-attack more and more and more to try and get back into the game, stretch the game out with a Bay, or even like a McGinn who was really combative in the midfield, you could see that Arsenal lacked someone right in front of that back two. And you've seen that for a while now, right? Arsenal always need that presence in front of the back two. Not because your Gabriels and whoever else you want to put in that back line, but are necessarily bad, but because without that protection in the Premier League, you're always going to have space that players can basically square up a centre-back and try and get back at them. And it puts them into positions where they need to be making last-ditch tackles and these kind of things. Arsenal don't want to be making last-ditch tackles in their penalty area. Sure, they got two great players in order to do that, but you don't want to have to do that because that's a game of chance. At one point, Ramsdale made that incredible save where Bailey is just through, and his hands have got there from like this position to there from a really quick shot. Cannons off the inside of the bar, and Arsenal is still in the game. That's why Ramsdale is so key to this side as well. I also really enjoyed Ben White's performance. I also think Zinchenko is just so key to this team, the way they move forward, the rhythm, the movement, the width that he affords them as well, but also just the way that when you see Jorginho is struggling a little bit, Zinchenko does come into the midfield in the middle, and you can see it gives Jorginho just a bit more of one more passing option to give Arsenal more numbers in the centre, and they outnumber the other side quite comfortably at that point, which I quite like. And you could see in the second half it was giving them those numbers that they really needed. It was giving them a numerical advantage over Aston Villa, that then when people were caught up the pitch, when Aston Villa were able to counter-attack on them and there was loads of space because Zinchenko was slipping inside. Zinchenko ultimately, I think what they made was they made the change with Fabio Vieira, and they also brought on Tomiyasu as well. But you needed to have another player up there. They also brought on Martinelli. I thought Martinelli had a really good game when he came on. Speaking of Martinelli, it is just great to have that like late brace. Do you want to call it that? that really just put the game away, obviously, but it's great to see Martinelli come back, get that kind of goal, give him that kind of level of confidence. You just want to get something at some point. And I also think that in terms of the way that Arsenal played, you could see it just completely deflated Aston Villa late on. You could see how much they put the effort in. And, obviously when Arsenal go 4-2 up, that's great. But as Jorginho said, that's the Premier League. That's the reason it's the best league in the world. I'm happy for Martinelli getting that confidence. I'm happy for how bright he looked late on. And, amazing to get that late winner and then consolidate it. But the late winner is the key for me. Trossard looked a little bit lost at times to me today, or looked a little bit like the game was slightly passing him by. And I don't know whether you Arsenal fans felt the same as me, but I felt there were times where I just looked at Trossard and thought, are you quite sure what it is? Are you quite being intense enough as you need to be? Because once Martinelli gets on the pitch, he's always an option. He's always a threat. He's slightly more narrow than Trossard as well. Trossard's almost like, he is like chalk on your heels type sort of player. So I'm enjoying and he wasn't always for Brighton. It's just that Arsenal play him a little bit wider. And then I did think they lacked a player who could have come on for Saka today. You realise how key Saka is, why they keep just scything him down throughout the game, why they keep going for him. They needed someone that out on that wing, they could just, and I get it, that maybe that is the tactic from any Aston Villa side, but ultimately Arsenal showed the grit, they showed the determination, and they put that little bit more pressure. If they play before City, put the pressure on them, always keep putting the pressure on them, makes the change in the Premier League and getting that early kickoff. You're kind of experiencing what a Liverpool have experienced in previous years now, where, a Martinez is really frustrating, wasting loads of time. Satisfyingly, the goal goes in off him off the end. I know a lot of people aren't Martinez fans, and I kind of rate him. I gotta rate his, I want to say S-housery, but I don't like him. It goes both ways. I just don't like what he does. I don't like that. The referee gave me a yellow card in the end, but I just don't like it. And yeah, I feel like when you're playing those kind of sides and they frustrate you, you just need to learn to get that numerical advantage and to get ahead, basically, in the game. And Arsenal at times looked like they were slipping in some of the traps that the smaller side set or the lower down side set in order just to get you sucked into a bang, bang. Yeah, do you want to keep trading punches, or are you going to just land a haymaker? And late on, they landed that haymaker right in the 12th round. Down go Aston Villa, and there is no recovering from that. It was scored so late. I will say this. The demeanour of Arteta on the line has tangibly changed. You can see there's almost like an exasperation. When Odegaard missed that, it wasn't an open goal, but when he missed that half a goal, I knew at that point that Arsenal were beginning to question themselves, and Aston Villa were saying, this could be our day here. So a late goal like that, it really gives you that belief in a title race. I know as a fan base, it gives you a belief. So savour it, enjoy it. Keep pushing with that, because I know the doubt is beginning to set in. I know a few people are beginning to caveat stuff. Let's go on the performance, not the result. A win today, great, but the performance against Everton was also really good. I also thought the performance against City, until City just completely took control of the game, was good. Same against Villa. There are going to be games where it's not all about Arsenal just dominating throughout. This is going to be the kind of thing that Arsenal fans need to stick with. And you could hear late on how much it meant. You could hear the Arsenal fans. That travelling contingent really had a big difference today. Sure, there's exasperation. Sure, there's stumbling. Sure, there's annoyance. All those things are part of a title race. Can Arsenal keep it up? With the narrative changing against City, some people making them the bad guys now in the Premier League with those 100 misunderstandings that Man City have had. Are Arsenal now the good guys in the Premier League? Are Arsenal the team that everyone is rooting for? Let me know. I'll be interested to know what your opinion is. Also, do you think Arsenal have the depth to keep this going? Because at the moment I do think the lack of depth is showing in these games. The lack of options just off the bench. The lack of someone to come in for Saka. Fabio Vieira comes in, I really rate him, but I still think you need someone else. You need a couple more substitutions. You just need one more position, maybe one more midfield change. And I feel like this Arsenal side is better. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll chat to you guys. Oh, also, would you be interested in seeing do we need the little Scotsman back in at left back at times? Would you drop on a day like this, maybe a Zinchenko into midfield and bring the little Scotsman back in at left back? I'm just saying. Maybe it's with. At some point that'll be handy. Anyway, it's nice to chat to you guys, and I'll chat to you in a while. Much love. Bye.